Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. I found a very interesting Bigfoot report online. It happened back in 1977 in Washington State, and I really like this Bigfoot report because even though the people who experienced this didn't actually see the creature, because it happened at night, there was a lot of other weird things that they experienced, that they saw, that they smelled. And it really gives off the vibe that maybe there's something more to Bigfoot than it just being a physical, flesh and blood being or creature or whatever you want to call it. We're still at that point where we don't know, but I feel like a lot of people nowadays, more than ever, are open to the possibilities of it being something more than that. And what is supernatural? Is it something weird or, the word supernatural back in the day, if you said Bigfoot is something supernatural, people would think you're a weirdo. But nowadays it's more like the supernatural is something that we just don't understand yet. At least that's what I believe. I think it's just science that's not yet, figured out. It's not understood. But this story, this experience, this encounter, you'll know what I'm talking about, because it just has, I don't know, this weird element to it that makes it out to be kind of mystical in a sense. But we might as well just get into it. Here is this report from Washington back in 1977. I was camping once with my wife, 2 kids, and my dog. Everyone had gone to sleep inside the tent. I was sitting outside with my dog watching the embers of our campfire die down. Suddenly a rock seemed to roll down the side of a slight hillside and hit the tent. I couldn't understand how that could be due to the thick trees and brush that surrounded us. Then it happened again. It was pitch dark on a moonless night near the Elwha River. I quickly woke my wife and the 2 of us grabbed the kids and got inside our car, which was parked less than 10 feet from our tent. My dog jumped up into my arms and began shaking. We sat in the car for about a half hour. Finally, I decided to get out of the car. I wanted my dog, who could be fairly aggressive at times, to come with me, but he refused to budge. He just kept shaking. I felt compelled to walk a little ways from the car, yet I also felt foolish to be doing it. Suddenly I seemed to feel the presence of something very tall, something living and man-like next to me. We just stood there together for what seemed like a time warp, an unknown amount of time. I could hear it breathing, and I could smell an unusual odor that seemed to be surrounding me. It was musky and rather foul. I thought I was imagining everything, and then I began to walk towards the car, but I froze in my footsteps when I could hear my unseen companion begin walking away from me. I could slightly feel the vibrations of each footstep it made. The time in between each step seemed slightly longer than the time I would need in walking, especially when it appeared to me that the being was snapping twigs and limbs as it left our area that sounded as though they were 50 to 100 feet away, and this was in a mere matter of 2 or 3 seconds. I quietly got back into the car and turned on the headlights, but nothing was around. We waited a little more, but there was a certain feeling that we had all experienced that seemed to have vanished. It was replaced by a mutual sense of peace and security. The unusual smell had also drifted away. It's hard to explain. Anyways, we went back to the tent and all cuddled up quietly and went to sleep. My dog's fear had also vanished at the same time ours did. I suppose it was my dog's attitude that was the deciding factor for us returning to the tent. All went well for the rest of the night. However, we decided to break camp the next day and head somewhere else. There have been reported sightings of Bigfoot around the Elwha River area from time to time, and I'm convinced that we were visited by one that night. I'm also convinced that I was so close to one that I could have reached out and touched it without any effort at all in that total darkness. So these people are camping, it's late in the evening, it's dark out. The guy's watching the campfire with his dog and he hears some rocks coming down a slope. Now, the way he describes it, it sounds like he's in an area where whatever was watching him or approaching, it had the high ground. It had an advantage. It had like a tactical advantage. He was in a more vulnerable position, which is something we always talk about when we're out looking for Sasquatch. We feel like it's a good idea to put yourself in a situation that gives them the advantage. We feel like they'd be more willing to check you out, to investigate you, and that seems to be what the case is here. So this thing comes down the slope. which is covered in trees and bushes and whatnot, which is, another advantage to the creature. But it sneaks up on him, and the dog goes crazy, and it weirds the guy out enough to cause him to get the family to hide out in the car, which is understandable. That's definitely better than being inside a flimsy little tent. But this is one of those things that happens in a lot of Bigfoot reports. If there's a pet, if there's an animal, especially a dog, they usually go bananas because they can sense a lot more than what people can. They're just a lot more sensitive to things being around. If there's an animal around, a dangerous animal like a bear, the dog will pick up on it long before a person would. And I don't know, usually when a dog encounters a bear, a lot of the times the dog doesn't run away. It doesn't cower away. It usually gets defensive. But with these Sasquatch reports, the dogs usually end up terrified. Equally as scared as the people are, if not more scared. So that's another element that you see in a lot of Bigfoot reports. Another thing is that this person claims to have smelt that weird Bigfoot stink that has been reported countless times. And they describe it as a musky, foul odor, which is, what you hear a lot of the times. It almost smells like a wet dog mixed with rotting meat or something along those lines. You hear that a lot too. But it has all these elements that make, the perfect Bigfoot report. And which leads me to believe that this story is probably genuine. It probably was a genuine Bigfoot creature. And, this thing eventually takes off. It leaves in a hurry. The way he describes it is that this thing, covered ground that a human being wouldn't be able to cover in the amount of time it took, a few seconds. It was already disappeared in the trees, up to 100 feet away. That's pretty wild. It said they left in the morning, and it doesn't say that there were any tracks that were found, which is something that's very strange. I feel like if they saw tracks and were able to describe them, it would be in the report, but they're not. And that's weird. That gives off, the supernatural Sasquatch kind of vibes, that it's something mystical, more than just a physical flesh and blood thing, something that can disappear out of this reality or phase out of this reality. But it gets weirder, because what isn't in the actual report but is kind of tacked onto it at the end that I didn't read when I was telling the story is that it says, this is really weird. It says that night they were also looking into the darkness, into the trees and whatnot, and they could see a whirring green light that would come and go every few minutes, about 50 feet away from them. They would see this whirring green light in the darkness. It doesn't say when they would see this, if it was before they actually experienced the Sasquatch creature or during. I think it would be before, but that is something very weird. Other people report strange lights in the wilderness like that. I think at the Sierra camp, Ron Moorhead, the guy who recorded the Sierra sounds, the famous Bigfoot vocalizations, he had reported at that camp up in the Sierra Mountains, they would see all kinds of weird light phenomena, and it would be directly linked to all the crazy Bigfoot activity they would experience. So that's very interesting, and that just adds another really weird element to this report. And what is it? Is it flesh and blood? Is it or an undiscovered primate? Is it something tangible like that? Or is there something more to it that we should be looking into? I don't know. I like this report. It doesn't seem like they encountered a bear or anything like that. It seems like genuine Sasquatch activity. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. We'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.